The old wooden golden horseshoe bar was buzzing like a beehive. The place smelled of grilled meats, wood smoke, and the faint aroma of freshly squeezed lime from numerous margaritas. Strings of old light bulbs hung above the counter, casting a soft glow on the massive barrels used for tables. There were peals of laughter, the clinking of glass glasses, and daring live music everywhere. A guitarist in the corner was boldly belting out another country ballad, and on a small stage, a girl in a cowboy hat was beating out the rhythm with her heels. Jake walked inside, squinting his brown eyes slightly, adjusting to the darkness after the bright sun. He was 32, and his age could be guessed by the slight wrinkles on his cheekbones and the confident gait of a man who knows his worth. Tall, broad-shouldered, he looked like he could tame a bull with one hand and hold a glass of whiskey with the other without spilling a drop. Jake was a mechanical engineer specializing in the design and maintenance of agricultural equipment. He worked for a large company developing innovative tractors and combines and was truly proud of his work. His clothes were often stained with oil and grease, and his hands were used to hard work, but that was what made him a master of his craft. He sat down at the bar, took off his tan cowboy hat, and nodded to the bartender. He already knew what to pour strong bourbon without ice. Jake had just taken his first sip when she caught his attention. Emily walked into the bar with her chin raised slightly, as if protecting herself from everything that surrounded her. Her wavy brown hair was pulled back into a messy ponytail, and her jeans hugged her slender legs perfectly. She clearly didn't belong here, too sophisticated, too urban, but there was genuine curiosity in her eyes. She ordered a cocktail and looked around furtively. Jake noticed how her gaze lingered on him for a moment. He grinned to himself, a city girl at a bar. It was interesting. He raised his glass, catching her attention. "You look like you're here for the first time," he said, leaning slightly in her direction. Emily raised her eyebrows, but there was a sparkle of amusement in her eyes. "And you look like you were born here," she retorted, crossing her arms over her chest. Jake chuckled. "I almost guessed right, so what brought you to this corner?" Emily took a sip of her cocktail and leaned slightly towards him, smiling. "Maybe fate. Or," she added with a sly squint, "a desire to find out what's so special about these places." Jake looked at her carefully, assessing not only the words, but also their shades. Emily grinned, setting her drink down on the counter and looking at Jake with a slight challenge. "Well, what are you doing, Mr. Local?" she asked, leaning on the counter. Jake smiled and took a small sip of his bourbon. "Mechanical engineer, I design and maintain agricultural machinery. In general, I help farmers make their work easier. And you?" Emily nodded, considering her answer. "I'm a journalist. I work for a large publication specializing in economics and business. I mainly write about corporations, startups, market trends. So that's why you don't look like the locals," Jake grinned. "It's not often that journalists appear here." She laughed. "I'm not surprised. I'm here for work. One large holding company is buying farmland in this region, and I am preparing material. I decided to look into this bar to feel the atmosphere. So, if I suddenly say something stupid, tomorrow will they write about it in the newspaper?" Jake frowned playfully. "Hardly. But if you say something really interesting, maybe," she winked. "Well, let's say that the technology I'm developing is one of the best on the market. Is this already a sensation?" he asked with a smile. "Maybe," Emily nodded, "if you add a little drama. For example, you can say that she saved the life of a farmer during a storm. This is not entirely true, but we once developed a tractor with such a strong cabin that during a hurricane, a farmer actually took refuge in it and waited out the storm." Emily rolled her eyes. "This is a really interesting story. I'd like to talk to this farmer. If you stay in the city longer, I can arrange a meeting," Jake suggested. "Are you always so hospitable?" "Only for those who order margaritas at our bar and are interested in agriculture," he smiled. The conversation continued lightly, with jokes and teasing. A casual sympathy arose between them, as if they had known each other for a long time. "Do you have a local number?" "What if I need an expert opinion on agricultural machinery?" Emily asked. Jake took out his phone, quickly dialed her number, and sent a message. Now you have the contact of the right specialist. Emily smiled. So now I know who to contact regarding farming issues. And I know who to contact if I want to know how the business world works, Jake replied, meeting her gaze. Do you think this is more difficult than working with technology? This is another difficulty. In my work, the laws of physics are unchanged. In yours, everything depends on people, and they are much less predictable than mechanisms. Emily looked at him thoughtfully. Good point. There are really a lot of politics and tricks in business, but I like to search for the truth. There is a challenge in this. Do you always accept challenges? As a journalist, yes. I love new stories and unexpected encounters. That's how it is now. Well, then this evening will definitely not be in vain. Maybe you can tell us what was the most unusual story in your career. Oh, there were a lot of them, she grinned. Once I had to pretend to be an office employee to uncover a financial scam. It wasn't easy, but the exposure was worth it. Not bad, so you can change roles. Sometimes you have to. And you, have you ever had to be someone else in your work? In a sense, yes. Sometimes you have to be both a mechanic and a psychologist when farmers start complaining about their fate, Jake laughed. They laughed, talked, and got to know each other. Time flew by. It seemed like this conversation could go on forever. Jake watched Emily carefully, trying to understand what it was about her that caught his attention. Curiosity burned in her eyes, but not superficial, but deep, exploratory. She didn't just listen to him, she analyzed every word, as if she wanted to get to the bottom of it. This was something new for him. Usually people either got bored or mistook him for a typical mechanical engineer whose life revolves around drawings and parts. But not Emily. There was genuine interest in her gaze. She was not afraid to enter into an argument. She did not just agree with him, but noticed details that others would have missed. It was captivating. In addition, she had a pleasant voice, soft, but with a hint of determination, and this contrast fascinated Jake. What are you thinking about? Emily asked, bowing her head slightly. Jake smiled as he set his glass down on the counter. About the fact that I haven't met anyone like you for a long time. And what are they like? There was a slight mockery in her voice. Those who know how to listen and are not afraid to ask uncomfortable questions. Emily thought for a moment, then nodded. And you know how to answer in such a way as not to deviate from the topic. This is rare. She studied his movements, his way of speaking, and especially the way he remained calm, even in moments of mild teasing. It was refreshing. In her world, full of fast pace, complex negotiations, and the eternal race for sensation, meeting a person who is not in a hurry, but simply enjoying the moment, was unexpectedly pleasant. Jake, meanwhile, understood that at that moment, the first spark ran between them. Emily and Jake walked leisurely along a paved path lined with shady trees. The pond reflected the warm light of the setting sun, and a light breeze gently ruffled Emily's hair. She looked at Jake and smiled. His calmness and confidence were conducive to an open conversation. So, Mr. Engineer, she began with a playful note, if you weren't developing technology, what would you do? Jake chuckled thoughtfully, putting his hands in his pockets. Perhaps I would open a small workshop. I like to work with my hands and create something useful. And you? He turned to her, carefully studying her face. I always dreamed of traveling and writing about people. Maybe someday I'll publish a book, Emily admitted, looking into the water. Book? What would it be about? Jake became interested. About meetings. About the people who inspire me, she replied, blushing slightly. It sounds exciting. Have you already started writing it? He asked, tilting his head slightly. Just notes for now, Emily smiled. Sometimes on the road, I write down stories that seem interesting to me. Perhaps you too will end up on the pages of my book. Jake grinned. I hope in a positive way. Suddenly, their attention was drawn to two teenagers tinkering with their bicycle nearby. One of the wheels dangled helplessly, and the guys clearly didn't know what to do. Jake, without hesitation, approached them. Let's see what you have here, he said, squatting down. Having examined the damage, he deftly took the multi-tool out of his pocket and began to tighten the loose fasteners. Emily watched him with admiration. There was something mesmerizing about how confidently and calmly he worked, as if it was the most natural thing in the world. After a couple of minutes, the bike was fine again. "Thank you, mister," one of the teenagers exclaimed joyfully, getting on the fixed bicycle. "Always happy to help," Jake replied with a smile, standing up. Emily shook her head at him. "I admit I'm impressed. Engineering savvy in action." "Well, I just like solving problems," he shrugged, continuing to walk next to her. They again slowly moved along the pond, enjoying the lightness of the moment and the feeling that their meeting was not just an accident, but the beginning of something more. After a walk, they found a secluded bench under a spreading oak tree. Emily sat up, stretching her legs and taking a deep breath of fresh air. "There's something special about this park," she said. "It's like time is slowing down." Jake sat down next to her, turning slightly towards her. "Maybe it's because you found the right company," he teased. She laughed quietly. "It's possible. What about you? Are you comfortable in such slow moments?" Jake thought for a moment. "I used to think that life was movement. But the older I get, the more I appreciate the moments when I can just enjoy silence and good conversation." Emily nodded, approval flashing in her eyes. "This is a rare quality. Most people chase after something without noticing what they already have." "Perhaps that's why I love working with technology," he admitted. "There's something stable about it. The machine doesn't lie if you treat it right." "Like people," Emily added softly. Their gazes met, and for a moment the world around them seemed to disappear. It was not just a conversation, but a subtle connection emerging between them. Emily ran her fingers carefully along the wooden surface of the bench they sat on. The night had already begun to envelop the park, leaving only the soft glow of the lanterns, which was reflected in the water of the pond. She took a deep breath, collecting her thoughts. "I didn't always want to be a journalist," she admitted, looking at Jake. "As a child, I dreamed of becoming a writer, writing stories that could inspire people. But then I realized that real life is often more interesting than fiction. That's how I came to journalism. I wanted to talk about people, their destinies, victories, and defeats." Jake nodded, listening to her carefully. He valued sincerity in people, and Emily's voice contained genuine passion for her work. "I think you've already seen a lot of things since you worked at such a rhythm," he said thoughtfully. "Have you ever had the feeling that sometimes you get too deeply immersed in other people's lives?" Emily smiled, shaking her head slightly. "Sometimes, yes," she answered, "but that's what makes me better. I understand people, their fears, desires. This helps not only in work, but also in life." She looked at Jake, waiting for his answer. He thought for a moment and then spoke, looking into the distance. "I grew up in a small town. Everything was simple there. Endless open spaces, cows, the smell of freshly cut grass. My parents ran a ranch, and I helped my father since childhood. He taught me to work with my hands, respect work, and always keep my word. This stayed with me for the rest of my life." Emily watched him carefully, feeling the nostalgia in his words. "Do you miss this?" she asked quietly. "Sometimes," Jake admitted. "There are times when I want to feel the morning cold in the pasture again, hear my father telling me about business, my mother calling me for dinner. But I found my way, and it seems to me that he is correct." They fell silent, enjoying the moment of silence that didn't need words. The evening sky stretched over the park, illuminated by hundreds of distant stars. A light breeze ran between the trees, bringing with it the smell of night flowers and cool moisture from the pond. Emily and Jake sat next to each other. Their shoulders barely touched each other, but there was already something elusively close between them. Emily took a deep breath, raising her head up, as if trying to catch every star with her eyes. Her heart beat faster, but not from excitement, but from the feeling of something right, inevitable. "I once thought that such moments only happen in books," she whispered, not taking her eyes off the heavens. Jake looked at her, the corners of his lips twitching into a slight smile. "Isn't it wonderful when reality turns out to be better?" His voice sounded soft, but it had the firmness of a man who knows what he wants. Emily turned to him, and at that moment everything around her seemed to freeze. The light of the lanterns dissolved in their gaze, the world narrowed to one moment. Jake gently ran his fingers over her cheek, feeling the warmth of her skin. She didn't look away, didn't take a step back. Their lips met in a light, warm kiss that lasted only a few seconds, but left a feeling of eternity. It wasn't something hasty or accidental. It was a conscious, quiet acknowledgement that they had found each other. Emily pulled back slightly, looking into his eyes. "Do you feel it?" she whispered. Jake nodded, his hand still on her cheek. "Yes," he answered simply. "This is exactly what I was looking for." And there were no more words. Only stars, a light wind, and two hearts that found each other under the evening sky. Their relationship developed rapidly, like a summer shower falling on dry land, bringing with it freshness and a new breath of life. They enjoyed every minute spent together, as if they were afraid of missing out on something important. Every evening when Emily and Jake were free, they looked for new experiences. Live music concerts have become their special tradition. They loved to stand in the crowd, feel the rhythm, exchange glances that spoke more than words. One day, at one of these concerts, Jake unexpectedly took Emily's hand and led her closer to the stage, where music filled their hearts. She laughed, and he looked at her as if it were the most beautiful melody in his life. They celebrated each other in small ways. Emily could order Jake's favorite coffee before he even asked for it. He, in turn, knew that she liked it when the rain drummed on the glass, and at such moments he would wrap her in a blanket and turn on old jazz. They understood each other without words. In their life, there was a place not only for romance, but also for trials. The first meeting with Jake's friends did not go as smoothly as we would like. One of his old friends, clearly not wanting to offend her, made an awkward joke. Emily tensed, but Jake immediately squeezed her hand, indicating that he was nearby. Later, when they left the party, he asked, "Are you okay?" She nodded, but then thought about it. "I guess I'm just afraid that I won't fit into your world." Jake smiled softly and hugged her. "Emily, you're already in it. And to be honest, he's not the same without you." Conflicts occurred, but they did not turn into an abyss. They found solutions, talked, and understood. Once they quarreled over a trifle, the choice of a movie for the evening. But then, looking at each other, they realized how stupid it was, and they both laughed. They chose not the film, but each other, and that was more important. Every day they became closer. Emily gradually got used to his rhythm of life, and Jake to her habits. He began to read the articles she wrote, discussed the news with her, and was interested in her view of the world. She, in turn, became more and more imbued with his world of technology, became interested in his projects, and even accompanied him to work, admiring the way he explained the intricacies of engineering solutions. They became not only a couple, but also true friends. Every weekend, they went on little adventures trips around the area, picnics, walks along the little-known streets of the city. One day, they went at dawn to a small coffee shop on the outskirts of the city, just to try a rare type of coffee that Emily had heard about. It was one of those days where even the simplest moments felt special. And then there were birthdays. For Emily's birthday, Jake organized a surprise for her, an evening on the roof of the old theater overlooking the city. Under the stars, with light music in the background, they talked about dreams, about the future, about how they see their life together. It was a moment that remained in their hearts forever. Over time, they realized that their love was built not on big words, but on small actions, care, and mutual understanding. They didn't need ideal circumstances, they created happiness themselves, finding it in simple things. Jake's family evenings were always special. It was a time for meetings, intimate conversations, and, of course, aromatic barbecue, which his father cooked with genuine skill. Every time the sun set and the first stars lit up in the sky, the whole family gathered in the courtyard of a large house, surrounded by spreading trees, whose light rustle added coziness to this warm atmosphere. The table was always bursting with treats, ruddy meat exuding spicy aromas, crispy, smoky vegetables, piquant homemade sauces, fresh salads with juicy tomatoes, and warm bread just out of the oven. But tonight was special not only because of the traditional dinner. This was the first time Jake had brought Emily to meet his family, and although he rarely worried about such things, now a whole storm of emotions was raging inside him. He wanted Emily to feel at home here, so that his parents would welcome her with the same warmth with which they would welcome him. As they entered the yard, Jake automatically squeezed her hand, and she responded with a light squeeze, as if to say, "I'm with you." He stole a glance at her, trying to catch any hint of excitement in her eyes, but instead he saw her soft, confident smile. Although, of course, he knew that inside she probably felt a little uneasy. In the yard, near a large barbecue, stood his father, Tom, a strong man with a good-natured smile and the confident movements of an experienced cook. He deftly turned the meat with large metal tongs, carefully watching for doneness. Smoke, saturated with the aroma of spices, rose from the hot coals, and this tart smell spread throughout the yard, making stomachs rumble in anticipation. Nearby, on a wooden table covered with a colorful checkered tablecloth, there were already large plates with side dishes, delicious slices of baked potatoes with rosemary, fresh vegetables sprinkled with lemon juice, aromatic corn on the cob with butter and salt. Margaret, Jake's mother, was energetically arranging salads while looking at her son and his guest with a curious smile. When Emily came closer, the first thing Tom did was smile broadly at her. "Well, are you ready to try the best barbecue in the area?" he asked, handing her a wooden fork with a delicious piece of meat covered with a golden crust. Emily carefully took her fork and took a small bite. At the same moment, her eyes closed slightly with pleasure. The meat was incredibly juicy, with subtle notes of smokedness and spices, perfectly balanced. "This is incredibly tasty. What's the secret?" she asked, breaking into a sincere smile. Tom laughed, fatherly proud that his cooking skills had once again impressed. "The secret is patience and the right spices," he answered, looking around the smoking grill with a satisfied look, and of course, in a good mood. When you cook with love, you can feel it in every bite. Margaret, hearing the conversation, came closer and, placing her hand tenderly on Emily's shoulder, said, "I'm so glad to finally meet the girl my son talks about with such warmth. Welcome to our family, dear." Emily felt her heart fill with warmth. There was something truly familiar in this place, something that made her feel not just a guest, but part of this cozy, friendly family. She sat down at the table next to Jake, and soon dinner turned into leisurely conversations filled with laughter, memories, and good jokes. The aromas of a smoking grill hung in the air, mingling with the light evening breeze, and the first stars lit up overhead, as if decorating this special moment. Later, after everyone was enjoying dessert, homemade cinnamon pie, and vanilla ice cream, the conversation turned to the future. Margaret, taking a careful sip of tea, turned to Emily. "What are your plans for the future, dear? I heard that you are a journalist." Emily nodded and thought for a moment before answering. "Yes, but now I'm thinking about something more. I want to create something of my own, perhaps a book. And also," she glanced at Jake and, smiling a little shyly, added, "I'm starting to think about what Jake and I will have in common." Jake, hearing her words, smiled and squeezed her hand tightly as if confirming that he shared her dreams. "We've already discussed this," he said, looking at her tenderly, "and I like the idea of finding a place where we both feel comfortable." Margaret and Tom looked at each other, and there was understanding in their eyes. They saw how their son looked at Emily, and they understood that this was not just a hobby, it's something more. That evening, sitting at the table, surrounded by smiles, warmth, and care, Emily felt that she had found something more than just the family of her loved one. She found a home. This conversation smoothly flowed into a discussion of their common projects. Jake shared his thoughts on growing his engineering firm, and Emily suggested writing an article about his work to bring more attention to his projects. They talked, made plans, and at that moment sincerity and mutual understanding shone in their eyes. As the evening came to an end, the music started, and someone suggested we dance. Jake pulled Emily's hand and led her to the center of the court. "Can you dance?" he asked with a grin. "Only if you lead," she replied. He put his arm around her waist, and they slowly spun to the rhythm of the music. Their legs moved in unison, and laughter echoed through the warm night. Margaret watched them with a slight smile, whispering to Tom, "Look how beautiful they are together. Do you think he will propose to her soon?" "I think he's already thinking about it," Tom answered, narrowing his eyes slyly. Emily caught herself thinking that perhaps this was the very person with whom she was ready to spend her whole life. Jake, as if sensing her thoughts, leaned over and whispered, "You know, it seems to me that this evening is just the beginning of something big." Months passed, and their relationship continued to develop rapidly. Jake and Emily not only enjoyed each other's company, but also inspired change. They became even closer, supporting each other in all endeavors. Jake has always been a talented engineer, able to find innovative solutions where others saw only limitations. Since childhood, he was interested in design, dismantled mechanisms, created drawings, and over time turned his hobby into a profession. He worked for a large company, was developing innovative technologies, but never thought about going beyond the usual. Everything changed with the arrival of Emily. She didn't just believe in him, she saw his potential deeper than himself. Her support, her confidence that he was capable of more, became a real catalyst for change for him. "Have you ever thought about starting your own company?" she asked one day, sitting opposite him in their favorite cafe on the corner of an old street. The cafe was cozy, wooden tables, dim lighting, the aroma of freshly brewed coffee, and light jazz playing from an old record player. They often came here, spending hours talking about everything: dreams, plans, the future. Jake chuckled, stirring his coffee thoughtfully. "Of course," he admitted, "but I always thought it was too risky." Emily put the cup on the saucer and looked at him carefully. "What if the risk is justified?" she objected softly. "You know that you have enough knowledge and experience. Moreover, you can do what really matters." She leaned closer, smiling. "I can help you with marketing, communications, and strategy. You will take care of the technical side, and I will take care of the promotion. This is the perfect combination." Her words stuck in Jake's head. He was used to being an engineer, solving problems, developing new mechanisms and systems, but never considered himself an entrepreneur. However, now, thanks to Emily, he saw an opportunity that he had never even thought about before. The first step into the unknown. Since then, he began to study the market, analyze competitors, and look for promising niches. In the evenings, he read books on business, studied stories of successful startups, and watched lectures by entrepreneurs. He met with potential investors, discussed possible projects, made calculations, and sketched out a business plan. Starting my own company was a real challenge. The first weeks and months were full of difficulties finding clients, paperwork, selecting equipment. Jake barely slept, spending all his time trying to get the process started. But he was not alone. Emily helped him with advertising, wrote articles about his developments, and organized presentations. The first orders arrived unexpectedly quickly. Thanks to her efforts, his projects began to be talked about in engineering circles. Companies began to become interested in his developments, and investors offered cooperation. Gradually, he assembled a team of specialists, expanded production, and opened the first office. But even despite the workload, she and Emily always found time for each other. In the evenings, Emily came to his workshop. She loved to watch him work, bending over the drawings, carefully peering at the diagrams, turning out parts or assembling new prototypes. Sometimes she herself tried to figure out what he was doing, asking questions that made him smile. "You are now a businessman, but you still work in the workshop yourself." She teased him one day, sitting down on a high stool at the workbench. Jake wiped the grease off his hands and grinned. "Because I love it. It is important for me not only to manage a business, but also to create something with my own hands." Emily has achieved success in journalism. Her articles on startups and innovation became popular, and she was invited to conferences and television. They both grew, became better, and moved forward, but always together. One evening, when they were sitting on the roof of his new office, enjoying the view of the city at night, Jake suddenly said, "When we first met, I didn't even think that my life would change so much. You helped me believe in myself." Emily squeezed his hand. "I just knew you were capable of more. You have always been special." Jake smiled, looked into her eyes, and quietly added, "And now I know that I don't want to build this future without you." Jake had been planning this moment for a long time. He wanted everything to be perfect, as special as their story had become. A few days before the event, he came to the shores of Buffalo Bayou to select a location. It had to be secluded, but at the same time with a stunning view of the setting sun. He found a small clearing surrounded by trees that offered a magnificent view. On the day when everything was supposed to happen, Jake was on his feet early in the morning. He ordered her favorite flowers, white peonies, and delicate roses, hired a musician to play their song, and brought a wicker basket with light snacks and a bottle of sparkling wine. Emily didn't suspect anything. She thought it was just an ordinary romantic evening. When they arrived at the place, her eyes lit up with surprise. A table decorated with candles, flower petals, music, everything looked like something out of a fairy tale. "Jake, what is all this?" she asked, smiling and looking around. "Just a little surprise," he replied, taking her hand. "You deserve the best." Emily ran her fingers along the rim of her wine glass, a small smile touching her lips. "You always find a way to surprise me." "Because you are the most important thing to me," Jake answered, looking into her eyes. "From the day we met, my life changed. You inspire me, support me, and make every day special. I can't imagine my future without you." He sighed, took a step back, and, getting down on one knee, took out a small velvet box. "Will you marry me?" His voice trembled, but confidence and love shone in his eyes. Emily felt her breath catch in her throat. Tears of happiness appeared in her eyes. "Jake," she put her hand to her lips, smiling through her tears. "Yes, of course, yes." Jake laughed as he stood up and put the ring on her finger. He pulled her towards him, wrapping her in a warm embrace, and whispered, "You made me the happiest person in the world." "And you me," Emily answered, closing her eyes and feeling their hearts beating in unison. At this moment, the sun finally disappeared below the horizon, painting the sky in warm shades of orange and pink. They stood in each other's arms while their favorite melody was heard around them. Later, sitting on a blanket, wrapped in a warm blanket, they discussed the future. "How do you imagine our wedding?" Emily asked, looking at Jake. "The warmest, most sincere, and filled with happiness," he answered. "The main thing is that on this day we are surrounded by family and friends." "Where do you want to spend it?" Emily tilted her head playfully. Jake thought for a moment, then smiled. "Maybe here, on the shore. This place has already become special for us." Emily smiled and nodded. "I like this idea. The main thing is that I will be next to you." Thus began their preparations for the wedding, a time filled with joyful chores, planning, and dreams of the future that they created together. The process of preparing for the wedding turned out to be a real challenge, but together they coped with all the difficulties. The first question arose about the location of the ceremony. Emily wanted something intimate and romantic, while Jake liked the idea of a traditional big reception. "What if we spend it on the shores of Buffalo Bayou?" he suggested. "This place has already become special for us." "It's beautiful, but what if it rains?" Emily answered doubtfully. "Maybe we should choose something with a roof, but with a panoramic view." Disputes about the location continued for several days, but in the end they found a compromise, a cozy country estate with a spacious terrace with stunning sunset views. There was both a covered part and an open lawn, which suited both. Then the search for a dress began. Emily visited many boutiques in search of the one. She tried on one dress after another until she finally saw it: sophisticated, light, with exquisite embroidery and a long train. "This is it," she whispered, looking in the mirror. Her friends applauded, and the store consultant smiled. "You look like a real princess." When she sent the photo to her mother and future mother-in-law, both were delighted. "You're amazing," Jake said when he saw a photo of her in a dress, although he still had to wait for the grand moment to see her in all her glory. Drawing up the guest list was also not without discussion. Parents on both sides were delighted and wanted to invite all relatives and friends. As a result, the list doubled in size, which affected the budget discussion. "We need to decide how much we're willing to spend," Jake said. "I want this day to be perfect, but I don't want to start our life in debt." "I agree," Emily nodded. "Maybe we can try to cut down on decor costs and do something with our own hands." At this moment, her mother intervened in the conversation. "You need to think about the comfort of your guests. Decor is important, but you can't skimp on food and music." Jake nodded. "You're right. We need a good balance." The discussions lasted for several evenings, but despite minor disagreements, they were able to come to a reasonable solution. The question of a wedding coordinator also sparked discussion. Emily believed that someone should take charge of the organization, but Jake was confident that they could handle it themselves. "I just want us to enjoy this time and not solve all the problems at the last minute," Emily said. "Okay, let's find a coordinator, but let's choose someone who really understands what we want," Jake agreed. They met with several candidates until they finally found the perfect organizer, a woman named Laura, who instantly grasped their style and desires. "I think I know how to make your dream come true," she said. "We will create an unforgettable atmosphere, but without unnecessary fuss." The last weeks before the wedding were full of excitement, joy, and anticipation of the most important day of their lives. Parents on both sides waited impatiently, helped with the organization, and gave advice. And Jake and Emily understood that despite all the difficulties, the most important thing was them and their love. Matt, Jake's best friend, has always been famous for his ability to throw unforgettable parties. Once he knew the wedding was around the corner, he immediately took charge of the traditional bar route. "Jake, old man, you understand that before you say yes, you need to have a good rest," Matt said as he sat down across from his friend at the bar. "I hope you're not planning on doing anything crazy." Jake narrowed his eyes, taking a sip of beer. "Crazy?" Matt feigned indignation. "Yes, I just want to spend a cultural evening, go to bars, and remember my youth." "Is this a crime?" "Knowing you, these aren't just bars." "What are you up to?" Jake asked with a slight grin. Matt leaned towards him conspiratorially. "So then, let's start with Old Jack. They serve the best whiskey in the city. Then we'll go to the Red Fox, where they have live music. Then," he paused dramatically, "Black Coyote." "Black Coyote?" Jake frowned. "Isn't this where you lost your shoes once?" "Exactly," Matt nodded happily. "And I still don't understand how this happened. But bro, this is part of the legend. We need to repeat this route." "Oh, I'm not sure Emily would appreciate a night like this." Jake shook his head, but there were cheerful lights dancing in his eyes. "Don't worry," Matt patted him on the shoulder. "The main rule of a bachelor party: what happens on this night remains on this night." "Yes, yes, are you telling me this before you drag me into another adventure?" Jake grinned. "Well, someone has to take care of your last days of freedom." Matt started with a grin. "So, bro, are you ready for the best night of your life?" Jake sighed and, raising his glass, said, "Okay, just promise me I won't wake up somewhere in another state." "No guarantees, buddy," Matt laughed. "But it will be epic." That same evening, Matt began calling friends, putting together the perfect itinerary. When they met for dinner, the group of 5 were already discussing details. "Let's do this," Tom, Jake's friend, intervened. "We need not just a route, but a full-fledged plan. What tasks can we come up with?" "Oh, great idea," Matt was inspired. "For example, Jake will need to ask a stranger to dance with him." "Great. He'll also have to order the weirdest cocktail at every bar," Brian added. "And write a message to your wife without auto-correction." Mark laughed. "Guys, you conspired to set me up," Jake protested, laughing. "We're just making memories, bro," Matt winked. So, discussing and laughing, they thought through the route, filling the evening with anticipation and excitement. This bachelor party promised to be truly legendary. Kelly, Emily's best friend, knew a lot about a good party. Therefore, when it came time to organize a bachelorette party, She decided that everything should be at the highest level. She rented a luxurious lake house that had everything: a huge pool, a cozy terrace overlooking the water, and a spacious living room with a fireplace. "Emily, you need to relax before the wedding," Kelly said, handing her a glass of champagne as soon as she crossed the threshold of the house. "Today you forget about all the troubles." Emily looked around, whistling in delight. "Kelly, this is incredible. How did you even find this place?" "I have my secrets, dear." Kelly smiled slyly. "But that's not all. I have prepared a few surprises. I hope you're not planning on doing anything too crazy." Emily narrowed her eyes, looking at her friend with suspicion. "Oh, absolutely," Kelly winked playfully. "For example, I invited dancers." Emily choked on her champagne. "What are you doing?" "Oh, relax, it's just for fun," Kelly laughed. "They are professionals, they will not cross any boundaries. Just a great way to add some spice to the evening." The old Coyote Bar on the outskirts of Houston was just the place to relax, get away from the hustle and bustle of the city, and just enjoy good company. There were no neon signs or loud parties, just an old wooden interior, soft light bulbs, the smell of strong whiskey, and the muffled sounds of country music flowing from an old jukebox. There was a pool table in the corner, and faded photographs of regulars hung on the walls. Jake sat at the massive oak table with his friends, enjoying the atmosphere of the establishment. The company gathered the closest ones. Matt, his best friend, the life of the party, who knew how to carry on a conversation and always found a way to cheer up. Volume, Jake's business colleague, the person with whom he went a long way from a simple engineer to the owner of his own company. Brian, Jake's brother, the eldest and always caring, but at the same time the one who never missed a chance to tease him. Luca's a longtime friend who was once his roommate at university and has since become almost part of the family. Trevor, best friend. "I can't believe we're all finally here," Brian said, holding up his beer bottle. "It feels like everyone lives their own lives, and there's almost no time left for meetings." "Because it is," Tom answered. "Work, affairs, family. Sometimes you forget that just beer with friends is what you really miss." "I actually thought that Matt would drag us to some noisy place," Lucas chuckled. "But he seems to be getting older." "Hey, I know how to throw a good party," Matt was indignant. "It's just that sometimes the best vacation is silence, whiskey, and good friends." "I agree," Jake nodded, taking a sip. "When was the last time we sat so calmly and just chatted?" "Probably 5 years ago," Tom thought. Or not. That time we ended up in some club, and Matt's shoe disappeared. "Yeah, it was a weird night," Brian laughed. "You never explained how it happened." "I don't even know," Matt chuckled. "I just woke up without a shoe, but with new numbers in my phone. Apparently, it was a good evening." They talked for a long time, remembering old stories, discussing the latest news and plans. Billiard games gave way to discussions of politics, jokes, and arguments about favorite sports teams. Time flew by, and the bar seemed to live at its own measured rhythm. Sometimes one of the visitors would throw a coin into the jukebox, and then the hall would be filled with the sounds of old hits that lifted the mood. "We need to do this more often," Tom said, looking around at his friends. "Don't wait for some reason, but just get ready like this, without haste." "I fully agree," Jake agreed, putting the bottle on the table. "I think I've forgotten what it's like to just sit and enjoy the moment." The old Coyote Bar was filled with warm light and the aroma of strong whiskey. Jake sat at a massive wooden table surrounded by friends, all of whom seemed to be in the mood for an evening of reminiscing. "Well, Jake, let's remember how you once decided to become a stuntman." Brian, his brother, began with a grin, winking at his friends. "Yes, yes," Matt chimed in, grinning. "Isn't this the story where you tried to jump over someone's swimming pool on a bicycle? Remind me how it ended?" Jake rolled his eyes and shook his head. "Well, first of all, I almost jumped over. Almost is the key word," Lucas laughed. "You flew into the water so epically that the wave almost flooded the grill." The owners could not understand what had happened for a long time. "And the main thing is that you then stood and claimed that everything went according to plan," Tom added, clapping Jake on the shoulder. What was left for me? Jake grinned. My self-esteem had to be saved somehow. The group burst into laughter as they ordered more drinks. Matt shook his glass thoughtfully in his hand, clearly thinking about something. Okay, guys, what if we make this evening a little bigger? Unforgettable, he said with a conspiratorial look. For example, Brian carefully clarified. For example, let's go bowling. Or, he paused and grinned. Let's find some karaoke bar and make Jake perform the legendary Sweet Home Alabama. Oh no, Jake groaned. Not again. Oh yes, Lucas supported him. The last time you tried so hard to get the notes out, it seemed like the speaker on the microphone broke. It was pure sabotage, Jake retorted, laughing. The microphone simply couldn't handle my talent. Well, what are we waiting for? Matt stood up and clapped his hands. Let's make this evening truly memorable. The old Coyote bar was still buzzing with laughter and friendly conversation when Matt, who was on a roll, leaned toward Jake with a sly smile. Okay, guys, what if we go to the Red Rose? He suggested, referring to a famous nightclub downtown. This is your last night of freedom, Jake. Oh, exactly. Lucas supported him, raising his glass. They say that the girls are simply amazing. Brian chuckled and added, and the cocktails are fine too. Although, I'm not sure that this is the most important thing. Jake shook his head and chuckled. Guys, are you serious? He leaned back in his chair and took a sip of beer. I have no desire to end the evening like this. Come on, it's just fun, Matt insisted. No one is saying that you have to do something, unforgivable. Honestly, Jake looked at his friends and suddenly felt how far he was from this idea. I'd rather just sit here, chat with you, and then go home. I don't need to prove to myself that I'm still free. I'm happy with Emily. There was silence at the table for a moment, but then Tom smiled and nodded. You know, Jake, you did great. Not everyone would refuse such a traditional bachelor party, but I respect you for this. Lucas sighed and patted Jake on the shoulder. Well, you'll just have to keep drinking. For a real man. For Jake. Everyone exclaimed in unison and raised their glasses. As the evening came to an end, Jake walked out of the bar, breathed in the cool night air, and smiled. He knew he made the right decision. This night was supposed to be about friendship, not dubious entertainment. He got into a taxi and drove home, thinking about Emily, how she would smile when he told her about his evening. And at that moment, he was absolutely happy. The rented house in the upscale Montrose neighborhood looked perfect for a bachelorette party. A spacious interior with a fashionable design, panoramic windows overlooking the lights of the night city, and a cozy living room with soft sofas created an atmosphere of relaxed fun. Modern paintings hung on the walls, and in the center of the room there was a glass table strewn with glasses of cocktails and plates of appetizers. The air was filled with the sweet scent of vanilla and sandalwood candles. Kelly, Emily's best friend, raised her glass of margarita and addressed her friends. For Emily, let this night be unforgettable. For Emily, the girls supported in unison, clinking their glasses and laughing. The music played at full volume, filling the house with the rhythms of your favorite hits. The girls danced, chatted, and enjoyed every moment of the evening. There was a cocktail mixer on the kitchen counter, and next to it were bowls of berries and lime slices. One of the friends, Lauren, mixed new drinks, improvising with the ingredients. Who wants to try my signature cocktail? She asked, holding a glass of bright pink liquid in her hands. Only if it's not as strong as your last experiment, Emily laughed, remembering their last party. Okay, this time I'll try not to overdo it with tequila. Lauren smiled and poured the drinks into glasses. This is the best bachelorette party you could imagine, exclaimed one of the friends, sipping a cocktail. You've seriously outdone yourself, Kelly. We're just getting started, Kelly winked. The evening is still ahead. Emily looked at her friends and felt the warmth spreading inside. This was her night, her moment of happiness, and she was going to enjoy it to the fullest. The girls sat on the sofas, pulling out the board game Truth or Dare, which always became the center of fun on such evenings. "Well, who's starting?" Kelly asked, shuffling the cards. "Emily, since it's your night, you get the honor first," Lauren suggested, handing her the deck. Emily smiled and pulled out a card. After reading it, she laughed. "Tell the most ridiculous story of your life or drink 2 shots," she said. "Well, it looks like I'll have to drink." The friends laughed, ordering new cocktails. The evening was just beginning, and many more surprises, unexpected confessions, and fun awaited them ahead, which they would remember for a long time. The music boomed throughout the living room as the girls laughed and poured cocktails. At the center of all this chaos was Kelly, the main entertainer, the generator of fun and endless energy. "Girls, it's a bachelorette party. Why are our glasses empty?" she exclaimed, grabbing a bottle of tequila. "No excuses, everyone drinks today." "Kelly, you're dangerous," Emily laughed, watching her friend deftly pour the amber liquid into small glasses. "I'm not dangerous, I'm irreplaceable," Kelly winked, handing a glass to each girl. "Well, here's to Emily and this crazy night." For Emily, there was a friendly exclamation, and the girls knocked back their shots in one gulp. Loud laughter and applause filled the house. Kelly clearly enjoyed her status as the evening's ringleader. She clapped her hands and ran to the speaker, dancing, switching the music to a more rhythmic one. "So, girls, it's time for real fun," she announced, smiling slyly. "Oh no, what are you up to?" Emily asked suspiciously, although it was clear from her face that she was ready for anything. "Surprise," Kelly waved her hands. "I invited someone special." "Kelly," Emily covered her mouth with her hand, guessing where this was going. "Let's not spoil it, but—" Kelly took out her phone and quickly typed a message. "In 10 minutes, the party will become even hotter. There will be dancers here." The girls exchanged intrigued glances, laughing and teasing Emily. Emily shook her head, but laughed along with everyone else. The bachelorette party was gaining momentum, and anticipation of something big was in the air. The music in the living room grew louder, and the laughter of the girls filled the spacious house. Emily, usually calm and reserved, felt the alcohol spreading like a warm heat throughout her body. She watched as Kelly poured her another drink, and suddenly realized why not. This is her evening, her bachelorette party, and if there is a moment when you can indulge in a little madness, then it is now. "Come on, Emily," Callie shouted, handing her the glass. "You are officially obligated to have fun." Emily laughed, took the cocktail, and downed it in one gulp. "Like this," Lauren approved, clapping her hands. "Now you are the real queen of the party." The music changed to something more rhythmic, and suddenly Emily felt an irresistible urge to dance. She jumped up from the couch and grabbed Kelly's hand, pulling her onto the makeshift dance floor in the center of the living room. "Wow, Emily, are you really our friend?" Kelly teased, gyrating to the music. "I didn't expect you to light it up like that." "Today, I'm a different Emily," she answered, laughing, and twirled under the light of the garlands. One by one, the girls joined in the dancing, twirling, singing, and laughing. The atmosphere was carefree, light, magical. At that moment, Emily realized that she had not felt so free for a long time. Cares disappeared, only music, friends, and this sparkling evening remained. At some point, Kelly stood up on the table, waving her glass and cheerfully shouting, "Lady and lady, today we don't just celebrate. Today we see Emily off to a new life. So let's make this evening unforgettable." The girls squealed with delight, picking up her energy. Lauren grabbed the karaoke microphone, and within seconds the living room was filled with the sounds of their favorite song. Emily, almost without thinking, grabbed the microphone and sang along with her friends, closing her eyes and completely surrendering to the moment. "God, I thought you would never dare to sing in public." Kelly laughed. "I thought so too," Emily answered, laughing, but her voice sounded loud and confident. The songs changed one after another. The dances became more and more bold. Someone turned over a cushion from the sofa, creating an impromptu podium, and the girls took turns walking across it, pretending to be models. Cocktails continued to flow like a river, But no one felt tired, only incredible joy and lightness. This is the best evening of my life. Emily exhaled, falling onto the sofa and closing her eyes. And it's not over yet, Kelly winked, pouring her another glass. Go ahead, we still have plenty of time. The music in the house began to play louder, and Kelly stood on the sofa, raising her hands in the air. Lady, get ready for a hot surprise, she announced, clapping her hands. The door to the living room opened and three guys in stylish suits entered the room. Tall, fit, with confident smiles on their faces, they moved to the center of the room to the deafening applause of the girls. "Ooh, Kelly, you really did it," Lauren screamed, laughing. "How could I disappoint you?" She winked. But one of the guys immediately attracted special attention. Tall, with a muscular torso, short-haired brunette with a sly smile. He moved gracefully and confidently, smoothly removing his jacket and throwing it to the floor. The girls squealed with delight. Emily sat on the couch, trying to hide her embarrassment, but she couldn't look away. He came closer, looking straight into her eyes with a slight smirk. "Hello, beauty," he said in a low, hoarse voice. Emily froze, feeling a shiver run down her spine. She didn't even immediately realize that he was addressing her specifically. "My name is Ryan," he grinned, slowly unbuttoning the top button of his shirt. "Relax and enjoy the show." The girls around squealed with delight. Someone clapped their hands. Someone was already filming what was happening on their phone. Kelly nudged Emily in the side. "Hey, why are you so frozen? It's part of the program." She laughed. "Let yourself have a little fun." But Emily couldn't. She felt the heat rush to her cheeks, and her heart began to beat wildly. Her embarrassment was noticeable even through the noise and music. Ryan leaned a little closer, lowering his voice. "You don't seem to be the type to go to these kinds of parties often, huh?" There was a slight mockery in his voice. "Not really," Emily muttered, looking away. But Ryan only seemed to get excited. He took her hand, running his fingers lightly over her wrist. "Don't worry, baby, I know how to make you like it," he whispered, gently leaning towards her. Emily jerked her hand away, her breathing hitched. "Everything is fine?" Lauren noticed her reaction and looked at her friend with concern. "Yeah, I need some air," Emily answered hastily, getting up from the couch. Kelly grabbed her wrist. "Come on, Emily, it's just fun." But Emily was already heading towards the door, feeling that a little more, and she would simply be overwhelmed by panic. She didn't know why this evening, which was supposed to be the best, suddenly began to turn into something she wanted to escape from. The music grew louder, and the evening gained momentum. Ryan, sensing the excitement in the room, began to move more confidently, gracefully taking off his shirt and showing off his sculpted muscles. The girls squealed with delight, clapping their hands and cheering on the dancers. "Well, now the real fun begins," Callie shouted, pouring herself another cocktail. Emily finally relaxed and laughed. A spark of enthusiasm flashed in her eyes. Her friends had arranged this evening for her, and she did not want to spoil their mood. Okay, this is really funny," she admitted, singing along to the song playing in the background. Ryan, noticing her change in mood, focused on her. His movements became even more seductive, and then, to a loud burst of applause, he sharply pulled off his pants, leaving him in only tight briefs. "Oh my God, what's going on here?" Lauren laughed, covering her face with her hands, but continuing to look through her fingers. Kelly, meanwhile, grabbed her phone and started filming. "It's just for fun," she winked. "We'll rewatch it later and enjoy it." "Kelly, no," Emily protested, laughing, but it was too late. The camera recorded every moment of what was happening. Ryan, noticing the shooting, played along, winking directly at the camera and making another spectacular movement of his hips. The girls screamed with laughter and applauded. At this moment, no one thought about the consequences. The evening continued, and everything seemed to be just a fun, carefree game. He stopped right in front of her, grinned, and, without saying a word, pulled off the last remnants of his clothes. Emily blinked, trying to focus, but the alcohol did its job. The world around her rocked like the deck of a ship. The guy leaned a little closer and, winking, said with a hoarse accent, "Come on, touch it. Don't be afraid." Her hand, as if of its own accord, stretched forward. Her hands touched warm skin, and she laughed, either from awkwardness or from the absurdity of the moment. Ryan nodded, as if encouraging her, and she, not quite understanding what she was doing, leaned closer. She began to pleasure him. Her movements were chaotic, devoid of any control, but he did not mind. On the contrary, his smile became wider. Emily didn't notice anything around her, no glances, no flashes of light, no how her own laughter dissolved in the echoing cacophony of the night. Emily barely opened her eyes. My head was pounding, as if someone had turned on a jackhammer inside. The room was too bright, and she immediately closed her eyes, trying to hide from the morning sun breaking through the huge panoramic windows. She groaned and pulled the blanket over herself, but after a couple of seconds she realized that there was no salvation. Morning had come, and with it came a hangover. "Oh, what happened yesterday?" she muttered, turning over on her side. Empty glasses, crumpled napkins, and remnants of confetti lay on the floor. There was still a faint smell of cocktails and sweet snacks in the air. In the distance, on the sofa, someone was snoring peacefully. It seemed that she was not the only one who had a hard time after yesterday. Emily tried to gather her thoughts. Bachelorette party, music, Kelly pouring tequila for everyone, dancing, laughter, loud screams during karaoke. And then, she frowned, feeling slightly uneasy. Memories became abrupt. There was a moment with the dancers, someone was filming a video, she was laughing. And then, scattered scenes flashed in my head, but they were blurred, as if covered with a light fog. "Come on, it's okay," Emily tried to reassure herself. After all, it was just a bachelorette party, a little alcohol, a little fun. This happens. Maybe. She took a deep breath, sat up on the bed, and rubbed her temples. It was necessary to find Kelly and find out what happened yesterday, because a slight anxiety did not let her go, even despite her fatigue. Emily stood in front of the apartment door, taking a deep breath before turning the key. My head was still buzzing from the bachelorette party, and my body seemed weak from fatigue. She pushed the door open and immediately heard a familiar voice. "Well, here's my beauty." Jake came out of the kitchen, smiling, but with a slight tinge of curiosity in his eyes. "How was the party?" Emily forced herself to smile, trying to look natural. "Oh, it was loud. A lot of cocktails, dancing, and girlish squealing." She grinned, taking off her shoes and sinking onto the sofa with relief. Kelly, as always, put on a real show. "What about the details?" Jake sat down next to her, handing her a bottle of water. "Did you, by any chance, release some exotic animal there, like last time?" Emily laughed huskily and shook her head. "No, this time no one tried to save the flamingos from a private yard," although Kelly still decided to outdo herself. Jake raised an eyebrow. "Oh, that sounds intriguing. What did she do this time?" Emily thought, rubbing her temples. Flashbacks came to mind in fragments. Loud music, dancing, phone flashes, someone's low voice, the warmth of hands on her waist. She sharply looked away, feeling a trembling run through her body. "Yes, so I invited a couple of surprises. Tatsarov, for example," she said with deliberate ease. Jake chuckled and shook his head. "Well, classic. I hope you weren't forced to take part in any madness." Emily laughed quickly. "Oh, of course not. Everything was quite good. We were just fooling around and dancing like always." She took a long sip of water, hiding her nervousness behind a smile. Jake looked at her carefully, as if studying her expression. "You look tired," he remarked, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Maybe you should lie down or shower first." "Yes, I guess," she muttered, trying to hide the sudden lump in her throat. She got up from the sofa and stretched, pretending that everything was fine. But as she headed towards the bedroom, Jake took her hand and squeezed it gently. "Emily, is everything okay? You're kind of thoughtful." There was concern in his voice. She held her breath for a moment before putting on a smile. "Of course, I'm just tired. The girls exhausted me with their competitions and dances. she answered with a shrug. Would you like me to make you tea or a massage? He suggested, without looking away. She felt everything inside her tighten. He was so attentive, so caring, and that was what made her even more worried. Why then did she not leave this vague feeling that something was wrong? No, no, I'll just sleep a little and everything will be fine, she said quickly, leaning over to peck him on the cheek. Jake nodded, but you could see in his eyes that he didn't quite believe her. Emily went into the bedroom, closed the door behind her, and exhaled slowly. She threw her purse on the chair and sank onto the bed, burying her face in the pillow. Memories of last night were spinning in my head, fragmentary, blurry, but one thing was clear: something had happened. Something she couldn't, or maybe didn't want to, remember yet. The coffee shop on the outskirts of Houston was cozy and quiet, perfect for leisurely conversations. Large picture windows let in soft daylight, and the smell of freshly roasted coffee filled the air. Jake walked inside, straightening his shirt sleeve as he went, and immediately noticed Trevor sitting by the window. He waved his hand and confidently walked towards the table. Trevor, it's good to see you, buddy. Jake smiled and sat down opposite him, putting in front of him a cup of coffee that he managed to grab along the way. How are you? Trevor clenched his hands nervously, trying not to show his anxiety. His fingers tapped the ceramic cup, and he took short breaths over and over again, as if gaining courage. Yes, okay, he squeezed out, forcing himself to smile. How are you? Jake, not noticing his excitement, smiled widely. Great, I feel like the happiest person in the world. There's only a little time left until the wedding, and I just can't wait. Emily is incredible. Trevor, honestly, I don't even believe that I was so lucky. Trevor swallowed, his gaze noticeably heavier. He lowered his eyes, wondering how to approach what he had come for. The words seemed to be stuck in my throat, not wanting to come out. Yes, Emily, he muttered, turning over possible options for starting the conversation in his head. Jake took a sip of coffee and leaned his elbows on the table, looking at his friend with genuine interest. Did you want to say something? He asked, noticing Trevor's hesitation. Trevor looked up, a shadow of doubt flashing in his eyes. He knew it wouldn't be easy to say what was going on in his head. He lowered his eyes to the cup again, as if he hoped to find the answer in the lace of the coffee foam. His head was noisy with thoughts. He clenched his teeth, wondering whether to speak or whether it was better to leave everything as it was. You look happy, Jake. Certainly. How else? Jake laughed, leaning back in his chair. I have an amazing woman who agrees to become my wife, the business is booming, and friends like you are always there. Isn't this a success? Trevor nodded, but his lips twitched and his smile was forced. He took a deep breath, trying to concentrate, but something inside him continued to bother him. Jake continued to talk about upcoming plans, about the flowers Emily had chosen for the ceremony, about the restaurant menu, about the jokes he and his friends had discussed. He spoke with such genuine joy that Trevor felt a weight rise inside him that he could not shake off. You're somehow tense, Jake suddenly noticed, narrowing his eyes. Everything is fine? Trevor immediately straightened up and put on his usual smile. Yes, sure. It's just a lot of work. I'm tired, that's all, he quickly answered, taking a cup of coffee and taking a sip, hoping to hide his anxiety. Jake thought for a second, but then shrugged. Well, if anything happens, you know you can always tell me, right? Trevor nodded again, but the words were stuck in his throat. He could not understand why he was shaking so much, why this dull, unbearable discomfort was raging inside him. Perhaps just tiredness. Perhaps. He didn't know. Trevor silently held the phone in his hands, his fingers trembling. He looked at Jake, trying to find some kind of support in his gaze, but he saw only sincere joy and carelessness. This is what made the moment even more difficult. Jake, he finally said, his voice taut, like a stretched string ready to break. I'm really sorry that I have to show you this. Jake frowned, tilting his head slightly. What are you talking about? He asked, putting the cup down on the table. You look like you're about to say something terrible. Trevor took a deep breath and, without another word, unlocked the phone, scrolling his finger across the screen until he found the video he wanted. His hand shook a little as he turned the screen towards Jake and pressed play. At that very moment, the whole world seemed to freeze for Jake. He looked at the screen, but could not believe his eyes. His future wife, his queen, was pleasuring another man. A few seconds and everything inside him went cold. His breathing became labored, and he felt his chest getting heavier. My throat was dry, and my fingers involuntarily grabbed the edge of the table. The silence between them became unbearable. Trevor watched him, not daring to speak first. Is this a joke?" Jake squeezed out hoarsely, without taking his eyes off the screen. His hands involuntarily clenched into fists, his nails dug into his palms, but he didn't feel it. Trevor shook his head. "I'm sorry, Jake," he said quietly, "but it's real." Jake was silent. Everything was confused in my head. The sounds of the coffee shop disappeared. Only the pulsating hum in my ears remained. He felt the ground disappearing from under his feet. His face turned pale, and his eyes remained glued to the screen where the video continued to play, the seconds stretching into infinity. He exhaled sharply and put the phone on the table, as if touching it any longer was unbearable. Who else saw this? His voice was choked, almost lifeless. Trevor looked away. He knew Jake needed to hear something that would make this easier. But you can't change the truth. Just me, and maybe a few more people, he answered carefully, but it's already gone. The silence dragged on. Take aback, shock. Jake couldn't believe this was actually happening. His world was collapsing right here in this small coffee shop, under the muffled noise of the coffee machine and the innocent conversations of visitors who did not even suspect that at that moment someone's world was flying into the abyss. Jake sat silently at the table, his gaze fixed on the empty spot in front of him. Everything inside was tight, thoughts were racing, but none of them brought either relief or understanding. He tried to find words, but his tongue did not obey. Trevor didn't move, didn't even dare to take a deep breath. The atmosphere in the coffee shop no longer seemed comfortable. The walls seemed to be pressing on both of them. Suddenly, Jake slowly stood up. The movements were mechanical, as if the body was moving on its own, without the participation of consciousness. He didn't look at Trevor, didn't say a word, just turned around and headed towards the exit. His steps sounded deafeningly loud in this silence, in this vacuum created by the moment of betrayal. Trevor swallowed convulsively. "Jake," he said quietly, but his voice immediately betrayed him, sounding weaker than he wanted. But Jake didn't even turn around. He pushed the door of the coffee shop, and the light ringing of the bell seemed to Trevor as a farewell ring. At that moment, he realized that nothing would ever be the same. He sank into a chair, clenching his fists. My heart was beating too fast. This was going to happen, he knew. But why does it hurt so much? He was afraid. I was afraid for Jake, for what he would do next. I was afraid for Emily. And most of all, he was afraid that their friendship had just broken into pieces that could no longer be put back together. Jake sat on the shore, looking at the endless waves that rolled onto the sand with a soft hiss and retreated back into the serene surface of the bay. The wind ruffled his hair, cool and salty, but he hardly noticed it. Questions were spinning in my head to which there were no answers. Trust, love, betrayal. He always believed that these things were inseparable. That love is impossible without trust. That betrayal comes from outside, from strangers, and not from those whom he allowed to become a part of his life. But now everything he believed in was destroyed, and he didn't know what to do with this emptiness inside. Short, painfully bright flashes of the past appeared before my eyes. Emily laughs, throwing her head back as he tickles her on the sunny afternoon. Emily prepares breakfast, humming something to herself, not even realizing that he is watching her with a warm smile. Emily is in his arms as they watch an old movie, and he feels her breathing become more even as she falls asleep on his shoulder. Each of these moments was part of something bigger, something that he thought was strong, indestructible. But it took one night, one mistake, and now he sat here, on the shore, alone, trying to understand where the line was between forgiveness and the inability to forget. The waves rolled onto the sand with regularity, and there was something calming about it. They had no doubts, no questions asked. They just were. Jake ran his hand over his face, feeling the roughness of his stubble, remembering the last time he slept properly. He couldn't remember. It seems like his mind has been haunting him ever since he saw that video. He pulled out his phone and turned it over in his hands thoughtfully, but did not dare to unlock the screen. What would he be looking for? A message from her? Explanations? Or maybe something that could undo what happened? But the screen remained black, and the silence between them was as dull as this empty shore. An elderly couple walked by holding hands. The woman leaned towards the man, said something, and they both laughed. Their laughter dissolved in the sea wind. Jake couldn't help but feel a pang in his chest. He wanted this. I wanted to be the one who, years later, would be able to look at his wife with the same warmth, with the same trust. But now he didn't know if it was even possible. Where is the line? Where does love end and pain begin? He would like to know the answer, but the only thing he had now was the endless waves rushing towards the shore and washing away everything in their path. Jake sat in the car, tightly gripping the steering wheel, peering into the lights of the night city, blurred by raindrops on the windshield. A storm raged inside him. Everything he felt seemed incompatible. Rage and pain, love and hatred, the desire to disappear, and the inability to leave. He could end the relationship right now. Call her, tell her that it's over, that he doesn't want to see her anymore. He could pack his things and leave, change his number, leave her in the past, make sure she never knew where he went. This thought brought strange satisfaction. Revenge. She deserved it, didn't she? But the next second, memories pierced his mind, rolling in like a wave. Emily laughs, squeezing his hand in the movie theater. Emily in the morning, with disheveled hair, in his t-shirt, drinking a cup of coffee. Emily, falling asleep on his chest, is so warm, so dear. His breathing became ragged. How can you just erase all this? The voice inside him was quiet but clear. He tried to drown it out, but it came back again and again. Love cannot disappear in an instant, no matter how much he wants it to. Jake slammed his hand on the steering wheel. He hated this weakness in himself. He hated that he couldn't just erase her from his memory. Part of him screamed, "Go away, leave her," and the other desperately begged for a chance to find an explanation, to try to forgive. He's tired of fighting with myself. He closed his eyes and took a deep breath, trying to find some clarity. But she was not there. Just an endless storm of emotions that refused to subside. Jake sat in the car, his thoughts racing from rage to despair, from the desire to end everything to the overwhelming need to hear her. He had been driving aimlessly for several hours, pressing on the gas as if speed could drown out the pain. But now, when the first emotions had subsided, only one thing remained in his head. He couldn't just leave without knowing her version. He took a deep breath, gripping the steering wheel until his knuckles turned white. Everything inside him protested against this idea. He wanted to hate her, wanted to tell her that it was all over, that he didn't want to see her face anymore. But the truth was that he wanted to understand. I wanted to know what she would say, how she would look into his eyes, what words she would choose. What if it was a mistake? If there is an explanation? A stupid hope that he had been trying to erase from himself since the moment he saw this video. But she still lived somewhere deep inside, whispering to him that he should not draw conclusions without hearing her. Jake sighed, pulled out his phone, and looked at the screen. No messages, not a single call. This hit him harder than he expected. She didn't even try to explain herself, or did she just not know that he already knew everything? He turned on the ignition. The headlights cut through the darkness of the night. I have to talk to her. With these thoughts, he turned the car around and headed home. Jake stopped the car in front of the house, but was in no hurry to get out. He sat looking at the dark windows and tried to calm his racing heart. Everything he felt was mixed into one lump: anger, fear, mistrust. But he knew one thing: he could not live without hearing her answer. Finally, taking a deep breath, He got out of the car and headed towards the door. As soon as he inserted the key into the lock, the door suddenly opened. Emily stood in front of him. Her face glowed with joy, as if nothing had happened. "Oh, you're home," she smiled widely, stretching out her hands to him. "I was already starting to worry where you had been." Jake didn't answer, didn't take a step forward. He just looked at her, coldly and carefully. "What happened at the party?" His voice was low, hard, devoid of emotion. Emily froze. Her smile faltered for a second, but she quickly collected herself, smiling nervously. "Well," she shrugged. "We were just having fun, dancing, drinking a little." "What really happened?" He interrupted her, his gaze piercing right through her. Panic flashed in her eyes. She took a step back, clasping her fingers. I I only remember the dancing, Jake. Everything was fine, honestly." Her voice trembled, and she looked away. Jake didn't move. He waited. I was waiting for the truth, or at least attempts to say it. Only dancing. His voice became even colder. "Emily, don't lie to me." She swallowed, her shoulders slumping slightly. Now she looked not happy, but wary, as if she realized that something was wrong. I I really don't remember everything," she muttered. "It was late, I was tired. Maybe I had too much." Jake clenched his jaw. A storm was boiling inside him. "What if I say that I saw the video?" he asked, carefully watching her reaction. Emily froze. Something flashed through her eyes that he couldn't immediately understand: fear, confusion, an attempt to remember. "What video?" she whispered. "You tell me." He took a step forward, closing the distance between them. "What happened next? Is there anything you want to tell me?" She took a deep breath, covering her mouth with her hand. Her mind seemed to be feverishly replaying the events of that night, trying to piece it all together. "Jake," her voice trembled, "I swear I don't know what you're talking about. I just remember dancing. And then everything is a little blurry." He didn't take his eyes off her, hoping to see at least a grain of sincerity. But at that moment, he could not understand whether she was telling the truth or just trying to hide something. Jake stood in the living room, clutching his phone in his hand. He felt that he would not get the truth from Emily. She either really did not remember anything or was afraid to tell. But he needed the truth. No guesswork, no omissions. He inhaled slowly and pressed Kelly's contact. The beeps dragged on for an excruciatingly long time. Time seemed to slow down, and the silence between calls pressed on his ears, causing his heart to beat faster. "Hello, Jake." Her voice sounded cheerful, but with a tinge of tension. "How are you? What's happened?" "Stop it, Kelly." His voice was cold and hard. "You know why I'm calling. I need you to tell me what happened at that damn bachelorette party." There was silence on the other end of the line. Then Kelly exhaled loudly. She could be heard moving, perhaps sitting on the sofa or going into another room. "Listen, she faltered. "Maybe we shouldn't talk on the phone. Let's meet and discuss calmly." "No," he snapped. "You're telling me everything right now, or there will be no wedding. Emily can't or won't tell you, but you know the truth. I want to hear it." Kelly fell silent. You could hear her swallow nervously and hear the TV playing somewhere in the distance. Then her voice sounded different, quieter, more careful. "Jake, everything is out of control. We just wanted Emily to relax, but yeah, she drank a lot. And yes, there were moments. That would have been better not to have happened." Jake clutched the phone tighter, barely able to contain himself. "What moments? Speak." Kelly hesitated again. She stroked this dancer. "And then, then I made him. Nice." Jake closed his eyes. His whole body tensed as if from a blow. It seemed to him that the floor was disappearing from under his feet. He grabbed the edge of the table with his free hand so as not to lose his balance. My head was buzzing. "What next?" His voice became very quiet, almost threatening. Then, Kelly seemed to be struggling with herself. They went to the bedroom. "Jake, I don't know what was there. But in the morning, Emily didn't remember anything. She woke up in her bed, but..." She didn't finish, but he didn't need to. My chest felt tight. The air seemed viscous and heavy. He slowly lowered the phone, feeling the rage rising inside him, mixed with emptiness. Emily froze in the doorway. She saw his face, saw how his expression changed, and did not even ask what the conversation was about. She already knew the answer. "Jake," she whispered, her voice trembling. I really don't remember." But he no longer heard her. His mind was flooded with pain and disappointment. All dreams, all plans, all love, everything collapsed in an instant. He felt his breathing hitch, how anger and despair fought inside him, forcing him to stand, unable to move. Silence hung between them, heavy as stone, and in that silence Jake knew that nothing would ever be the same again. Jake stood silently. He looked at Emily, but it was as if he didn't see her. Before him stood a man whom he knew, whom he loved, but at the same time a complete stranger. His chest was compressed so hard that he seemed to be suffocating. "Jake," her voice was weak, broken. There were tears in my eyes, my hands were shaking. I don't know what to say." He took a step back, as if creating a gap between them. "Don't know?" His voice was full of bitterness. "Honestly, me too, because I don't know who you are." These words cut the air, leaving emptiness behind. Emily sobbed, her face contorted in pain. I don't remember anything, Jake," she blurted out in despair. "I was very drunk. I don't know what happened." He grinned, but there was not a drop of amusement in this laugh. Only anger and disgust. "Convenient, isn't it?" He clenched his fists. "Just say, 'I don't remember,' and hope that you get away with it." "This is wrong," she screamed, her voice trembling. "I would never. I don't know how it happened. I don't care whether you know or not." He barked, looking at her angrily. "The fact is that it happened. Are you saying that someone forced you? What was it against your will?" She froze, stunned by his words. I She swallowed convulsively, trying to find an explanation. I drank too much." "Oh, so this is an excuse." He shook his head. "I just had too much to drink and accidentally did what I did. Do you even understand what that sounds like?" Emily burst into tears, her shoulders shaking. "Jake, I swear I didn't mean to. I love you. I didn't want this to happen." "You didn't want to." He raised his hands in the air as if giving up. "What did you even want, Emily? Did you even think about me, about everything that we had?" She reached out to him, trying to touch him, but he retreated abruptly. "Don't touch me." His voice was quiet but threatening. Emily covered her face with her hands, tears rolling down her cheeks. She couldn't breathe, couldn't think. Everything they had was crumbling right in front of her, and she didn't know how to stop it. Jake turned away and headed for the door. "Jake," she started screaming, but he didn't even stop. "You ruined everything yourself, Emily," he said over his shoulder, live with it now. The door slammed, and the silence that was left behind seemed like the most terrible thing in the world. The old Coyote bar was packed to capacity, but Jake found a secluded spot in the corner, away from prying eyes. There was an empty bottle of whiskey in front of him, and a half-full second one next to him. He mechanically twirled the glass in his hand, not noticing any noise, music, or conversations around him. There was an emptiness in my head, filled only with the echo of betrayal. "One more," he said to the bartender, without taking his eyes off the wooden counter. The bartender, an elderly man with tired eyes, looked at him appraisingly, but remained silent, simply filling the glass with amber liquid. Jake took a long sip, wincing at the burning sensation in his throat. "You look like you've lost everything," said a familiar voice. Jake looked up and saw Trevor. He sat down opposite, ordering himself a beer. They were silent for a few seconds, then Trevor sighed. "So you decided to get drunk until you lose your memory. Will this help?" "It will help you forget," Jake snapped, raising the glass to his lips again. "This is not a solution, brother." Trevor shook his head. "I know how you feel now, but if you let your emotions consume you, it will only get worse later." Jake smiled bitterly. "Worse, much worse, Trev. The woman I trusted more than my life turned out to be." He fell silent, unable to finish. She destroyed everything. How can I live now? How can you trust someone again? Trevor took a sip of beer, lowered his eyes, and then said slowly, "People make mistakes, Jake. Some mistakes are fatal, but, no one is immune. Did you really think that life would go smoothly?" Jake looked at him with irritation. "I thought that if I was honest, loving, and loyal, I would get the same in return. Is it really that stupid?" Trevor nodded. "No, it's not stupid. But there are no guarantees in life. She might not want it. She might just. Just what?" Jake interrupted him sharply. "Just forget. Just lose control when you're drunk. Do you even hear what you are saying?" "I hear," Trevor answered calmly. "But I also see that if you don't stop, this glass will become your new love. And then she won't destroy you, you will destroy yourself." Jake snorted angrily. "Do you seriously think that you can just take this and let it go?" Trevor looked into his eyes. "Not right away. But you don't have to destroy yourself, Jake. You are stronger than this." Jake looked at the bottle in front of him. A few more sips, and he'll actually forget about it for a couple of hours. But what then? The pain will still remain, only with a hangover. He took a deep breath and pushed the glass aside. "To hell with you, Trev. Order me a coffee." Trevor grinned and waved to the bartender. "That's right, brother. Let's start with coffee, and then we'll see how to live further." Emily sat on the edge of the bed, the phone in her palms, the screen glowing with a list of calls. Jake didn't answer. She tried to call again and again, but the answer was only short beeps or an answering machine. Her hands were shaking, her heart was pounding in her chest. She felt like she was losing control of her own life. Tears blurred her eyes, but she quickly brushed them away, took a deep breath, and picked up the phone. She needed an answer. She had to find out the truth. Emily remembered that Kelly had ordered dancers and, without hesitation, called her. "Kelly, I need the number of the agency you hired for the bachelorette party." Her voice was tense. "For what?" My friend was wary. "Just give me the number," Emily almost screamed. After a short pause, Kelly dictated the contact. Wasting no time, Emily called the agency and, citing a party, asked for information about the dancer Ryan. A few minutes later, she already had his address. She couldn't wait any longer. Having entered the coordinates into the navigator, she went to him. As she pulled up to the small apartment complex, doubts filled her mind. Maybe this is a mistake, maybe it's not worth it, but it was too late to retreat. She got out of the car and walked towards the door with firm steps. Ryan opened the door. He was wearing sweatpants and a t-shirt. His hair was slightly disheveled, and there was a grin on his face that showed slight surprise. "Oh, I thought you wouldn't show up again," he said, crossing his arms over his chest. "Are you bored?" "I want to know the truth," Emily said firmly, clenching her fists. "What happened that night?" Ryan leaned against the doorframe, his grin widening. "You really don't remember," he drawled mockingly. "I thought you were in the mood." Emily felt her insides tighten. "Tell me what happened." Her voice trembled, but she did not back down. Ryan grinned and took a step closer. "You were so enthusiastic. I thought you wanted to continue, and when we went to the bedroom, well, you kind of fought back at first, but I figured you were just a little nervous. Then you became lethargic. I added some wonderful powder to your glass, and you just relaxed." Emily stepped back, heart pounding. Her breathing became ragged. "What? What did you do?" she whispered, feeling a chill run down her spine. Ryan shrugged. "Are you serious?" He grinned. "Isn't that what you came for? Did you want to remember how it was?" Emily froze as if the whole world had collapsed around her. There was a noise in my head, my hands were shaking. Then, without another word, she turned and stormed away. There were tears in my eyes, my breathing was labored. She didn't know where to run, what to do, but one thing was clear: the truth that she learned was worse than any assumptions. She ran through the streets, not noticing either passers-by or cars. There was a buzzing in my ears, and his words were ringing in my head. At some point, her legs gave way, and she leaned against the wall of the building, trying to catch her breath. The whole body was shaking. How could I come to this? How could I not remember? She took out her phone and dialed Jake's number again. Horns. 1 second. Third, all the same in different short beeps. Her lower lip trembled. Jake, she whispered into the void. I'm so sorry. But there was no answer. The park looked the same as it did that evening when Jake loved to walk here with Emily. A light wind stirred the leaves on the trees, children were playing somewhere in the distance, and ducks were swimming on the pond. But now this picture did not seem ideal. The atmosphere between them was tense, as if the air was saturated with unresolved questions and unspoken feelings. Emily stood by the bench with her head down. Her fingers trembled as she clutched the fabric of her dress. She waited, and then, finally, Jake appeared. He walked slowly, with a heavy expression on his face, his eyes filled with fatigue and pain. Thank you for coming, her voice was hoarse, as if she had cried a lot. Jake nodded, stopping a few steps away from her. They were silent for several moments. I need to tell you something, Emily began, looking up at him. There were tears in her eyes. I was at Ryan's. I found out what happened that night. Jake tensed, but didn't say anything. He was just waiting. Emily took a deep breath, trying to compose herself. He said that I didn't want to at first. Her voice trembled, that I resisted. And then he gave me something. Tranquilizer. I didn't even realize. She covered her face with her hands, trying to hold back her tears. Jake, I swear I didn't mean to. Her voice broke. I don't know how it happened. I don't remember. But I know one thing, I love you. And it hurts me so much at the thought that I could lose you. Jake ran his hand over his face, exhaling heavily. He looked at her exhausted, tear-stained, broken. Everything in his chest tightened. He wanted to be angry. I wanted to scream. But at the same time, he saw fear and sincerity in her eyes. Do you understand what this means for me? His voice sounded even, but a storm was raging inside. Do you understand what it's like to look at you now and try to separate the image of the woman I love from everything I've learned? Emily nodded, swallowing back her tears. I understand, and I hate myself for it. But Jake, I beg you, don't turn your back on me. Give me a chance to explain. Give me a chance to be there. He grinned, but there was not a hint of amusement in it. Should I explain? How? You don't remember yourself. And this is the worst thing. Emily sobbed. I want to remember. I'm trying, but I can't. It's all like a fog. Jake turned away and looked at the bench where he once stood on one knee with a ring in his hands. Now this moment seemed distant, almost alien. We need time, he said quietly. We need to sort ourselves out before we talk about marriage again. So you're not leaving me? Her voice was so quiet that it was almost drowned out by the wind. He looked into her eyes. I don't know, Emily. I just can't make that decision right now. Emily bit her lip, then squeezed his hand in hers and whispered, I'm ready to wait as long as necessary, just so as not to lose you. Jake squeezed her fingers in response. Both were silent, listening to the wind rustle through the leaves, filling their pause with meaning. Therapy and rebuilding trust. 6 months have passed since that fateful night that changed their lives. Jake and Emily sat in the cozy therapist's office, opposite each other, trying not to look away. They were no longer the same people as before. The pain was still there, but now there was something else in their eyes' hope. Dr. Lynch, an older woman with a kind but penetrating gaze, looked calmly at them over her glasses and folded her hands on the table. You both had to go through difficult moments, she said softly, but the fact that you're here shows your willingness to work on the relationship. Emily clasped her hands and looked at Jake. I know that my mistake left a deep mark, and I still blame myself. Her voice trembled slightly, but she continued, despite the lump in her throat. I just want you to know, I don't live in the past anymore. I live for what we have now. I can't change what happened, but I can prove that I deserve a second chance. Jake took a deep breath, ran a hand through his hair, and shifted a little in his chair. It's not easy, he finally said, his voice hoarse. I won't lie, trust, it's slowly returning. Sometimes I wake up at night and remember everything again, but I see how hard you try, Emily, and I don't want to lose what we have been building all these years. If I've learned anything in these 6 months, it's that relationships are a process. They do not collapse overnight, but they are not repaired instantly either. Dr. Lynch nodded, making notes on her notepad. Trust is a process, not an instant decision, she repeated. What helps you move forward? What moments give you hope? Emily looked at Jake, her lips trembling slightly. We started talking more. We used to hush up a lot of things, but now we are honest with each other, even if the truth is painful. Jake chuckled and shook his head. I've also become a better cook, he joked, and for the first time in a long time, Emily smiled. You should have seen how I ruined my first attempt at making shrimp pasta. It was terrible, Emily laughed, brushing away a tear, but I appreciated the attempt. Dr. Lynch noted this reaction with a warm smile. These are small steps, but they are the ones that build new relationships. The main thing is to continue moving forward, not looking back with regret, but only with lessons. You both understand that rebuilding trust is a process, and from your interactions, I can see that you are willing to keep working. Jake looked at Emily. He saw her vulnerability, her sincere desire to fix everything. He saw the woman he once loved with all his soul and realized that this love was still there, under layers of pain and resentment. I want to try, he said quietly. I want us to succeed. Emily covered his hand with hers. Me too, Jake. And I will do everything so that you can trust me again. The small chapel in the center of town was almost empty. Only the closest one's family and a few friends gathered here to witness their union. There were no lush decorations, no loud music, no hundreds of guests. Just the two of them, willing to give each other a second chance. Emily stood at the altar, her eyes shining with happiness and excitement. Jake looked at her with tenderness, which no longer contained the pain that had haunted him for the last 6 months. They had weathered the storm, but now they were finally standing together as a team. Jake, her voice was soft but firm. I promise to always tell the truth, even if it's difficult. I promise to take care of you and us, to be there in joy and in difficult times. Jake squeezed her hands in his and smiled. Emily, I promise to always hear you, even if it hurts. I promise to trust you, to build our life with you without fear or doubt. We've been through a lot, and I don't want to lose you again. The priest pronounced them husband and wife, and as Jake leaned in to kiss her, Emily felt like this wasn't just a new phase, this was a new beginning. Later, in the backyard of their new house, where there was not yet a perfect garden or expensive furniture, but there was already their common comfort, they turned on the old record player. The warm glow of the flashlights illuminated their figures as Jake took Emily's hand and pulled her towards him. You know that we will succeed, right? He asked, swaying slightly to the rhythm of the music. Emily smiled, resting her head on his chest. Now I know this for sure. They left the shadows of the past behind. Now they only had their love and the future they were creating together. Subscribe to our channel so that your love doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think click to the next one.